Today we'll be interviewing Ty Jenkins. He is a 3-time teen CrossFit Games champion and competitor. He only competed for 3 years. So he won when he was 15 years old in 2021, and then he mentions it, but he was the second 16-year-old to win the 16, 17-year-old division in 2022, and then he followed Dallin Pepper as a three-peat champion as a 17-year-old in 2023. He's now only 18 years old, 19 years old now. You will get the sense that he does not seem like a 19-year-old. Super cool guy.
Yeah, it was a great interview.
Super cool guy. Go follow him on Instagram. I think it's Ty Jenkins. There's a number after it.
Yeah.
But if you search up Ty Jenkins, go follow him. He's super cool. Yeah, thanks again, Ty, for the interview. I'm Skylar.
I'm Cody.
And Cody.
I'm Ty. Nice to meet you guys.
Great to meet you.
Yeah.
So we've recorded like 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
Just the 2 of us. Like, we're just trying to get like more content for our gym.
Yeah.
Gym's only 7 months old.
Oh.
So yeah, we're just kind of trying to get stuff in. And
Are you guys like coaches or co-owners or?
Yeah.
Co-owners and coaches.
Yeah.
We kind of do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
His wife is also 3rd co-owner.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So we're 99% the only coaches. There's a few others or one other guy that helps out occasionally, but yeah, just finished a class. So yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. I'm assuming, I feel like most CrossFitters, Thursday is a rest day. Is it your rest day?
Yeah. I usually do a long run and then just meal prep, take care of groceries, laundry, all the things you have to do. So
Heck yeah.
Nice. So easy day.
yeah, for sure.
Cool. So I've obviously messaged you like a couple weeks ago after you were on Sevon's podcast, and you're still 18, yeah?
I just turned 19.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So I was just like, it's snowing here. Probably not in Jacksonville, I'm assuming.
No, where are you guys out of?
Olympia, Washington.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
We don't get snow a ton, we get a lot of rain, but
A lot of
a lot. Anyways, I've known who you were, followed you for a while. Obviously, like when you have the accolades that you do, 3-time game champ, I'm gonna know who you are. But I was just like so impressed by like how well spoken you were, in general, but obviously with your faith as well. That's what I kind of messaged you about first. So we're like, oh, we should get a guest on, and you were the first guy we thought of, because our gym, we're like kind of a faith-based gym in a way. So I'll just get into my first question. Our gym is CrossFit 528. There's 2 reasons for that. Growing up in sports together, I was always number 5 and he was 28. So it's
Cool.
pretty easy name there. And then his wife was like flipping through the Bible, trying to find a deeper meaning with it. And she found Luke 528 is when Jesus was like gathering his disciples. And the verse is really short. It's basically Levi got up, left everything and followed Jesus. And we all kind of like stopped our careers, what we had to start this gym. Just like a quick calling from Jesus, and we're like, oh, let's run with it. So I wanted to know, like, have you ever in your life felt like a calling so strong where you're just like, okay, yeah, immediately I'm gonna go with that?
I can't put it on a moment, but I definitely, looking back, feel like that is kind of what happened to start my CrossFit career. There was never a moment where I was like hit with this, all right, leave everything else behind and go pursue CrossFit. But it kind of slowly happened because CrossFit really wasn't, I didn't get into it to compete. I got into it to get better at sports. And then, that first year goes by, we're kind of just fit enough to get past each stage, getting super competitive, and then get to the games. And then, I come back from the games and my Instagram for the time like blew up, and I had like 2,000-3,000 followers. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was reflecting after the games and I was like, wow, if you actually think about what 3,000 people looks like, you're like, I kind of have like some influence here. And so the next season I played with like, okay, is this what I need to do? Is this where I'm going to get a platform to ultimately glorify God more so than anything else I'm doing in my life? And so that whole second season was kind of a question mark in the air. I was trying to do something that was very rare and had only been done by Dallin Pepper before, which was win the 16 to 17 division at 16 years old on the male side. The girls tend to do it a little more often. So I get back and lots of prayer that summer because I knew in my mind if I ended up winning the games that year that this was going to be it, and I was going to push in and I was going to do this because I knew that it was ultimately going to put me in a spot where I could glorify God more so than just going to play college sports and
Yeah.
study and spend the next 4 years of my life kind of doing what everyone else does. I mean, not everyone else, but you know what I'm saying? A more basic path. And so I ended up having this like super unique opportunity that come back from that second year of the games, platform expands even more and just began to really feel like I think this is like what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And from there, it was like, okay, I mean, what changes do I need to make to lock up this third year in the teenage division and then look farther beyond that?
Right.
I tell people all the time that my third year at the CrossFit Games, I was not training to win the teenage CrossFit Games. I was training to make the jump to the elite as soon as possible. And so, really, after that second season, my total training, life, everything took a shift and was like, I mean, as long as I still feel like through prayer that this is in accordance with God's will, like I'm pushing all into this. And so that was kind of my like leaving it behind. It was about a 6-7 month process, but finally I was like, okay, like now I felt like that was when I had my moment and was like leaving everything behind. But it wasn't as instantaneous as it was on the horizon before I committed to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane that you had that at 15 years old
Yeah.
or 16, whatever. Um, yeah, that's just, and you're still only 19. It's just crazy to me how mature you really are.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned making a shift from like the team division into that individual. What does that kind of look like? Because like all we ever know is just straight CrossFit and that sort of thing. I know there are differences and stuff like that, but what did that look like for you in your day-to-day just training?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing was gaining weight. Like you look and it's not so much anymore. Even 3 years ago, it was still most people believed that to be a champion, you had to be 5'7" to 5'9" and 190 to 200 pounds.
Yeah.
But now, like I'm training every day with Dallin Pepper, who at parts of the season is 220 pounds. He's 6 foot tall, like a very different archetype. So I kind of saw that beginning to happen, and I'm like, athletes are getting heavier. I think the two younger Panchik brothers are two of the lighter games athletes that have shown up in the last 3 years, and they're like 175 to 180. So the athletes really were heavier. And then obviously strength. And so the biggest changes that felt like changed my life was I was eating a whole lot and then definitely had more of a strength focus. I was already strong for a teenager, but I knew that my strength had a long way to go before I was, middle of the pack to high end strength in the elite field.
Yeah. You're also still going through puberty. Like,
Yeah, which is
in a way,
helps.
still
Helps.
growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that like transition, you obviously won 3 games in a row. And then like last year, what did you do last year? I don't honestly know
Okay.
how far you made it or if what you were trying to do.
Yeah. So last year, sorry, rewind back to 2023. I did elite quarterfinals that year, even though I
Okay.
was
Remember that. Yeah.
And so I was, I believe, 14 spots out of making it to a semifinal in North America West.
Yeah.
And so then at 18, the next year, I was like, let's make it this year. And so I actually went out to Las Vegas to do it with Kiefer and Kyra Milligan and some of the underdog at the time underdogs. And had a great weekend. Like they were so awesome, so welcoming, had a blast. And obviously, lining up next to Alex Gazan and Kyra and Kendall
Ricky
Gilmore.
there?
What?
Was Ricky there at the time?
Ricky was not. No. but still, I mean, obviously some great
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And so I ended up sitting 16th or 17th in North America West. And then the review process, I got a whole bunch of step overs taken away or step ups,
Yeah.
which, I had the chance to do something uncommon, and that was like publicly take ownership of my penalty because I felt like a lot of the athletes were frustrated, which
I mean,
rightfully
yeah.
so. I really think they cracked down on it. But ultimately, you can't be like, well, I could have got away with this in past years, or they changed the standard, or the standards were in there. The whole keeping your head in line with your body was in there. It was frustrating because it was different, but it was in there. And so I rewatched my video several times before submitting an appeal and was like, yeah, I had a lot of no reps. I still submitted the appeal because I didn't agree with the number, but ultimately it's like I had no reps. I gave them the opportunity to take reps away. It falls back on me. There's no one else to point fingers at or be at fault. And in that, I got a unique opportunity that sorry, I'm gonna put this in.
Very good.
So in that, I got a unique opportunity to just stand out a little bit. And as Christians, sometimes the best evangelism we do isn't necessarily telling someone to their face about Jesus, but it's standing out and making them curious. And so I had a post that did really well on social media where I was just like, listen, this is my fault. And as frustrating as it was, and as heartbroken as I was to be the youngest American semifinalist, like all these things that I'd been working over a year for,
Yeah.
to see the support in the comments and be like, it's nice to see someone taking responsibility for it. Like, this is cool. Like, and then a lot of Christians came to my side and were like, this is all right. Like, this isn't who you are. Like, God has more for you than CrossFit. And so just all of that was so awesome. And so obviously in the moment, I was very frustrated and very upset, but looking back on it, it was a good thing. And then a little bit of twist in the knife, CrossFit goes, this year's semifinals are online. And
Yeah.
so we're going to do everything we can to move perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, that was a long explanation.
Oh,
That's
no,
what
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like CrossFit is different than most sports in the fact of like the mental toughness side. Because you've kind of talked about it with swimming. I know you did 10 years of swimming, and how it's just you versus you pretty much. You're in a lane and that's it. Um, have you always had that mental toughness? Because I know like, right, when you're doing an open workout and it's like the worst thing in the world, right? When you get to that point of, oh my gosh, I want to stop. Like, have you trained on that for years? Have you like how have you developed that mental toughness to like push past those limits?
I think I've always had a lot of like stubbornness. And so I think the combination of stubbornness and competitiveness is ultimately what breeds that toughness in workouts.
Yeah.
But really, ever since, I mean, probably since the time I was 10 years old, I've been obsessed with like special operations, Navy SEALs, all that stuff. And you read about Buds and Hell Week and all this crazy stuff, and you're like, I've ever since I was a kid. I mean, if CrossFit wouldn't have happened, I think that's where I would be right now.
Okay.
And no one could convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
I love that type of stuff, and so I've always think I've had a little bit of that mental grit, but I definitely think a lot of that was learned from swimming. I think a lot of that was, the discipline. You get what you put into it is what you get on the other side. Like, do something that sucks now because it's going to make it better in the future. Like, just kind of seeing there's a lot of instant gratification that goes on now, and kind of swimming taught me the opposite. It was like put in the extra hours in the pool now, and in August when state championships rolls around, you're going to be glad you did. Like, even though it sucks now. So I think it's a combination of a few things. I think I've had a little bit of it, but I definitely think a lot of that behavior is learned.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 I think we did 24.1 as the class workout today. And
Oh, nice.
it's like a prime example of that, where it's like everybody can do a dumbbell snatch, everybody can burpee. How fast can you do it? And
Yeah.
I remember watching Taylor Self do it and like how just
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like that's what like can separate us from you is like you can push that much harder and
Plus a little bit extra.
right, look,
Yeah.
extra strength, extra gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, this is more of like a fun question. We actually did this. I asked him in our first podcast. We were talking about like the NFL because like the Super Bowl just happened. In the NFL, they like build the sport to make it so people like teams can't stay at the top for like that long. That's why like dynasties rarely occur. And they like obviously like the worst team picks first in the draft. This all relates to CrossFit, I promise. Um, and like there's a salary cap, like keeping teams from being dominant. So the question for you, put you on the spot, is if CrossFit decided like we don't want like
The
another Tia Toomey or another Rich or Matt, how do you think the sport could go about um basically keeping the top from staying at the top for so long?
Um, I'm gonna answer this on the men's side because I don't think there's anything CrossFit could do to dethrone Tia Toomey if she
Sure. Yeah.
I'm fully convinced of that. She's
Yeah.
an angel. But you know, Frazier always accuses Castro of doing this, but I really think the best way to do it is look at your reigning champion, what historically are their worst finishes, and within reason, program a couple events with that stimulus. You know, if you have a 14 event weekend and your champion isn't good at handstand push-ups and rope climbs, like you wouldn't want to see both those movements each show up 4 times. That's poor programming. So there, I think that's the most direct thing you can do. But I ultimately think it's hard if you get someone as well-rounded as Tia.
Yeah.
Because it's like without doing something that I think blurs some of the moral law of sports, like giving a false drug test and then banning them. I mean, I obviously think that's way out
That'd be wild.
and horrible.
Yeah.
But you know, within the limits, I think it can be hard, especially because now you're seeing like Sprague obviously won the games this year. There were question marks. Wins Wadapalooza, proves to everyone that he deserves to be there until he's dethroned. And it's like now athletes are so knowledgeable about what they're bad at that all you're going to do is see Sprague's bad areas become like mediocre areas. And then in the future, he's going to suddenly those are become strengths. And then he's going to be really hard to keep out of the, you know, top 5 for the rest of his career. I guarantee it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good answer. Sure, give him your answer.
Yeah, so I thought I thought that you could do like an extra event and doesn't count for points, but like Matt Frazier at his peak would have to run a marathon and 40th place coming like you kind of rank a system and the 40th finish guy who you'd think would finish last would then only run like a mile or something like that and just break it up so that Matt comes into it running a full marathon, having to do everything else after. I think that's fun.
It's a bit
event.
brutal.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. I think it's Hinshaw. One of the coaches in the space has always wanted to see this event because it would be very unique to aerobic capacity and pacing. But they all of them are on a track, all 40 of them. They run a lap. The last 2 each lap are eliminated. But so very cool.
So it's like a 400 sprint, and then it's
an
800.
Hold on. But what sucks is then you're punishing the people who win the event. So you can't do something like that. But I hadn't even thought about that. That's a good way to, I mean, dethrone someone is let them win that event.
Something more. Yeah. So you mentioned obviously Tia's dominance. And you're with Brute, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you're a Mayhem athlete before. Is that correct as well? Okay. Go like when you have been picked, like choosing a, you wouldn't say program, but like a camp, whatever, right? To join. Does like the thought of like, I don't know, the dominance of an athlete go into it? Like when I think of,
he's a big Rich fan.
I'm a huge Rich fan, just so you know. Like, that's my idol. That's my guy. I have a question specifically that I have to ask you about. But when you choosing a camp, do you ever think of like, oh, Rich, 4-time guy, Matt Frazier, 5-time, Tia, 7. Jeez. Did that have any influence in choosing where you'd want to like go, kind of?
Yeah, yeah. So you look at all these camps, and you kind of have to realize that every camp nowadays has more than one coach.
Yeah.
I mean, so you look at this, and I was with Mayhem and loved it. I mean, the people out there are amazing, but ultimately, Rich coached himself with the help. Darren Hunsucker, Jake Locker, we're a part of that, but Rich was his own coach. And so, I spent time out there and then programmed for myself a little bit. Ultimately, that is the goal for me.
Okay.
Once I'm confident enough and feel like I have enough knowledge is to program for myself because
Would you make it like not just yourself, but like take athletes under that?
probably not while I'm competing.
Yeah,
Maybe do something along the lines of Rich is like if I have a big enough platform at that point, once I retire, then kind of doing that. But yeah, ultimately I'd love to program for myself because I'm a big believer no coach can know your body the way you do. So spent time at Mayhem and then went on to coach myself. And then I was like, maybe I'll go work with Mayhem. And then I was like, maybe I just kind of gathered my options. And, I found out that like Fraser isn't coaching anyone at Hard Work Pays Off. He worked with Mal and Katrin and maybe Hopper for a little bit. And that was it. Like there was no opening over there for me where I would be coached by Matt Fraser.
Yeah.
Same thing at Mayhem. Like Rich is still doing his Leadville 100, still training on his own. So he's not in the capacity to coach another athlete. Obviously, if one of them two had, then I'd be like, I mean, before I made the decision to come to Brew, I would have been like, oh, well, maybe that's where I should be. But then I started looking around and I'm like, okay, who are athletes in the space that have a coach that's still active that are doing really well? And then kind of as I was trying to figure that out, Matt Torres, Dallin's coach, reached out to me about just coming down and checking out Jacksonville. And so at that moment, I was like, it's kind of dumb. I didn't even think about that. Like Dallin was the 3-time teen champion and then makes the jump 2.5 years later and fifth fittest man on earth in 23 and then second this year. And so I'm like, well, if Matt has turned one teenage champion into Dallin, then maybe, I can follow in his footsteps. So that's ultimately the decision-making process for this season. But yeah, I'm always just on the lookout for a good coach who, and I think there's great coaches in the space. And then I also think you athletes have to be just as responsive. And I think athletes can't do two things. They can't be robots, like just see the program, do it, move on. Like I think there needs to be a part and they take some like creative liberty in that. And then I also think that they have to communicate how their body feels with their coach. And I think you can have a phenomenal coach, but if an athlete isn't doing those two things, then you're going to struggle to put together a good training program.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have Matt that's like in the gym with you every day, but then you have a guy in Australia that
Jaden.
Okay.
So he like I don't know, I wouldn't call it an apprenticeship, but essentially studied under Matt's programming for a little bit. So they have very similar styles. And yeah, it's a great setup. I mean, obviously Matt has the in-person experience. He's worked with several teenagers in the space before they went on to jump to the elites. And so just he knows what teenagers are doing wrong. And so there's that. And then there's Jaden and I who work together on my programming, and it's phenomenal. He does a great job. And even showing that to Matt and being like, hey, this is, I feel like a weakness. Like Jaden's asleep right now because he's in Australia. Yeah. Let's change this piece together. So it's all three of us that kind of work together to build this cool, perfect storm of programming.
That's really cool. What is Matt James's coach also?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So how many is Matt like directly with?
I believe 5 or 6, not many. So he works with Fee Sagafi, Dallin Pepper, James Sprague, Cam Gray, he's Australian.
Yeah.
And then I believe Rebecca Didison.
Okay.
Uh, and then maybe one or two others, but really, he actually, I'd asked if I could be his athlete,
Yeah.
and he's kind of stepping into more of a leadership role, and coaching other coaches, and kind of just going to be the head of group. And so, I respect that, and I still think it was worth coming down. Jaden's been amazing, and obviously being down here with Dallin and Fee every day is awesome. So
Yeah. So obviously 3-time champion. You've kind of become this role model to a lot of the younger athletes. What's like a piece of advice you have for someone that wants to start competing in CrossFit as a young athlete?
if you're playing other sports, don't quit them for CrossFit. Uh, I got the awesome opportunity to work at the Teenage CrossFit Games last year. I wasn't competing, I was 18, but I got to be back there in the warm-up area, hear the stories of the athletes, help the athletes through the weekend. It was an awesome experience, but I slowly learned that so many of these athletes quit their other sports for CrossFit. And just, I think there's a lot of value in individual sports, but I think there's even more value in team sports. And a lot of these, I mean, some of these teenagers are 14 years old and they're quitting their other sports. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you hadn't even got to high school yet. Like that, those are the best years of team sports. Those are, I mean, I can't speak to college sports, but I loved my high school years of sports. And so that's my first thing. And then secondly, it's like, listen to your body, warm up. Kids do not like to warm up. Listen to your body, warm up, and then just, slowly chip away at your weaknesses. Like, I feel like kids just want to come in and do 5 Metcons in a day and work out 8 hours today. And then the next day they're trash and they can't spend that long in the gym. Like, program a week at a time, preferably get with a coach who knows what they're doing. But if you're doing your own thing, like, program out a week at a time, so you're not doing 5 things today and 1 thing tomorrow and have this inconsistency. There's just a lot that teenagers are very passionate and don't have a lot of direction. And so that's kind of the chaos that happens with teenagers. But I like, if you're skeptical about trying CrossFit, do it. You'll love it. If you have an ounce of competitiveness, you will love CrossFit, but it's not worth giving up your other sports for.
Yeah.
I played 3 other sports. Every year I won the Teenage CrossFit Games, and it didn't get in the way, and it helped, if anything. So
Yeah.
That's wild. So what was like, and you're like, so like a full-time high school student, like did you feel like number one, did you feel like you had a normal childhood still? And then number two, like what was like your day-to-day in those 3-4 years
Yeah.
of
Wow.
high school?
So as far as I mean, I feel like I still had a childhood. I
Okay.
mean, I don't feel like I was a 30-year-old man at 15.
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely had a different childhood. I still had friends my age. We would still hang out Sundays and Thursdays. My friends knew that. Those were my days.
I love
That was when we could hang out. I didn't compromise a whole lot. But luckily my friends were awesome, and they were like, we love what you're doing and we want to support you through that, but we also want to be your friend. So they would be willing to meet on like, we hang out on Thursdays and Sundays, and it was awesome. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think I was so busy that, and around adults all the time, just because our CrossFit gym didn't have a teenager at the time. I was like, some of my best friends are married men who have adult jobs, and I mean, like, kids. And so it definitely caused me to grow up quickly and be mature, more well-spoken, be able to talk to adults, which are all skills that I absolutely don't regret learning. And then as far as schedule, I mean, probably the busiest time was baseball season. And I would usually get to the gym just before 5 in the morning, and then would train until 7:15, get to school around 7:30, and then get out of school and would have practice until I mean, depending on what part of the season we're in, practice could go till 6:30 or 7, and then would head back for a little bit.
The gym.
Yeah. And so just if I had homework, I was not a happy
Yeah.
person because then I get home at 9 p.m. and have to do homework after being all over the place all day. But my senior year, I did half of a schedule, which was nice at school. So I would get up at like I would get to the gym like 6:30, and then wouldn't have to go into school until 10, so I could train 6:30 to 9:30, and then kind of same thing. Would still go back after practices in the afternoon, but it felt a lot nicer getting to sleep in till 5:30 instead of 3:30.
Right.
Makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
So baseball, swim, and then what was the other? You said three
football.
sports. Oh, duh. Yeah.
Nice.
I didn't know that. What did you play in football? We're football guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was a middle linebacker. What'd y'all play?
I was a corner.
I mean, like high school
Yeah, we played both
receiver. I used to be kind of tubby, so I was originally like a lineman. My dad's been an offensive lineman coach for a long time, so
Oh,
then
gotcha.
I kind of transitioned to tight end, and then both receivers, outside linebacker,
Yeah,
corner,
corner.
corner
Oh,
and for him.
Yeah.
But
how's the football up in Washington? Like they're good high schools?
yeah, there
Yeah.
are. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not like Texas or California,
yeah.
but it's like
It's
I mean, yeah, you can't compare those.
if you were to rank the 50 states, I would say it's
It's definitely,
about average, but above average.
yeah.
I would hope to
Yeah.
think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
we actually we're done now, but we just coached 4 years of high school football. Like
Nice.
right out of college, we started coaching. Um, we actually like we were 22 and we were the head coaches. Really small school. It was 8-man football.
Oh,
I don't
that's
know if
fun.
have you ever watched it?
Yeah.
It's
Aren't
like
the scores ridiculous? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yep.
like a completely different sport in some ways. It's obviously the fundamentals are the same, but
Yeah.
like creating offensive plays is so fun and
Yeah.
same
Do
amount
whatever
of
you want.
same amount of space, 6 less dudes total on the field. And so yeah, typical like we call it like a track meet. It's high school,
Yeah.
but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
yeah.
Was there any sport that you wish you played?
I wish I wrestled for longer.
Okay.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Like I mean, just from what I know now, like I hope my kids are passionate about whatever sports they do. But if I have girls, I want them to swim and do gymnastics, and then obviously team sports. But if I have boys, I want them to do a combat sport and swimming, and then obviously team sports on top of that. But those two, I think, just set them up to be so good at any other sport
Yeah.
that that's something I just wish I had either gymnastics or a combat sport.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I mentioned it earlier. Rich is like my idol. I got into CrossFit because of him. So this is a two-part question. One, was there any guy that you or girl that you like not idolized, but just that's who you wanted to be coming into CrossFit? And then the second one was because I believe you've trained with Rich before. What was that like? And like,
Okay.
is that?
Part one. So are you guys familiar with Tyler Christoffel and Bailey
Yeah.
Rail? So they lived about 45 minutes from me growing up. So that first season when I made it past the open, my dad and the guy who was coaching me at the time was like, hey, there's these really good athletes less than an hour away. Like, let's go drop in one time. So Jessica Griffith, Tyler Christoffel, Bailey Rail, first day there. We're all doing Mayhem programming. Like at that point, we hopped on the Mayhem athlete track, and just seeing in person how fit and strong Tyler Christoffel was.
Yeah.
Was like that made me want to like chase after him. And he very shortly moved to Tennessee, which but stunk a little bit because I loved being around him.
Yeah.
But I would say I definitely looked up to him and Bailey, and then obviously Jess was that role model and coach for me for over those 3 years. So those are the three I really looked up to. But obviously, like you have to look up to Rich. especially if you're doing mayhem programming. Like the dude's a beast.
Yeah.
And then to get to train in the same gym as him was crazy. Just like it, I mean, I don't even know what you would call it, but when he walks into the room, it's like there's just a feeling that kind of sets in, and there's all these guys, all these top athletes out at Mayhem, but like when Rich is in the room, he's the top dog, and everyone knows it. And if Rich needs your barbell, then like it's your barbell. He owns every barbell in that gym. So I mean, but in the same way, he walked with such humility that you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Like if you were not a CrossFitter, you'd be like, man, they really respect this dude, but like I don't get it.
Yeah.
You can still tell that he was head honcho around there, but with how humble he was, it was just made that feeling even more cool that it's like the legend he was, but so down to earth. And then obviously the intensity he brings to training.
Yeah.
At the time, he was 34, 33 or 34, and still whooping up on all the elite athletes.
Crazy.
So it was like just crazy. But yeah, I loved training with him. Don't disrespect his equipment. Use be serious when you're training. Don't get hurt. Outside of that, you're on his good side, and it's a blast.
I love it. You mentioned Jessica, Jessica Griffith, correct? And now,
Ahoy now. Yeah.
she coached you, and then she also did your nutrition, correct?
Yep. Yep.
So for me, I feel like nutrition would be like the hardest thing to change. Was that the hardest, or were there any other thing like maybe sleep or whatever that changing to be an elite athlete, was that a tough transition?
I mean, sleep was something I got on super early just because I knew as soon as I started the CrossFit thing and was trying to get stronger for my other sports before I started competing in CrossFit. Like that's something all the coaches know and teach is like you produce HGH when you sleep 8 to 9 hours a day. And they looked at me and they're like, we've heard sleeping even more helps. So I was a 9 to 10 hours every night guy when I could get it, because obviously I was pretty busy. But that was important. Nutrition was tough. Just because I quickly realized how much worse macros at restaurants are. And I love eating out. Like I love food. I was a chubby kid growing up, so I just absolutely loved when there was like I love going to a steakhouse, Longhorn Steakhouse in Branson, like my favorite building in the whole city. I love good food, and so that stunk a little bit. But I'm also not picky, and I got into a rhythm with like some monotony. I ate the same breakfast for almost 3 years straight. Very similar lunch every single day, so that helped. But yeah, like that first, I literally remember I have them somewhere at my house because I didn't want to throw them away. But I have a stack of note cards of my macros, foods that fit them, foods that don't. I had written them all out. I literally had like cards of meals I could make, what combinations I could make in a day. I mean, I had everything laid out. And so for a week, it was a headache. But then after that, I just kind of settled into a rhythm and was like, it's not only cheaper, but it also is going to fuel me way better if I have this food at home every day. And so it was a learning curve at first, but once I got settled into a rhythm after that first week and a half, it's been something where I'm like, I will never not track my macros now. Just because I can tell the 2-3 weeks after the games when I just eat whatever I want. I mean, to be honest, I feel horrible. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we have a minute 15 left on this Zoom call. Seriously.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. We know you have a busy day.
Yeah.
Everything that's going on. Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
It is
I got one more quick question.
Yeah.
What's your plan for this year? Like open, like the normal CrossFit route? Are you doing like thoughts about High Rocks or World Fitness Project?
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me on in case I get cut off by this timer.
Right.
So the very rough plan so far, I'm going over to Germany to do the Open with Adidas, which I'm so excited about.
So cool.
And then online semis are going to come here in May. I've already qualified for NorCal Classic. through online. That's official the 28th, I think. So no penalties. And then I will try to qualify to Syndicate Crown through online semis. And then on top of all that, I think I'm going to try the World Fitness Project Indianapolis. And then just depending on how the body feels, it's a lot of competing. I might give the road qualifier run and then Wadapalooza next year,
Yeah.
obviously.
Love it.
So,
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, follow us up, share in the comment in the comments who you want to see next.
Yeah.
And then like and subscribe.